Well, folks, this is going to be a great Leading Your Best Life podcast. I'm talking to Matt Illingworth. He is an Olympian, a Commonwealth Games cyclist, and also a husband of one of our Pod Squad superstars, Nicole. So, Matt, welcome to Leading Your Best Life, mate.
Thanks for having me, Leigh. Good to be here.
Straight away, we can see he's got an accent, folks. So just to give you a bit of background, because I'm sure he's mildly humble, so I'm just going to give you a bit of his background. Here he is. Rode in the 1992 Summer Olympics at Barcelona and 96 in Atlanta for Britain. And then at the same time, we have him doing a whole lot of other fantastic things in cycling. So I want to drill down on this today, Matt, to say, you know, what goes on between a person's ears to achieve that. And at the same time, the other thing we've got, of course, is your business, your cycling business is Churchill Cycles. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So here that is. We'll touch on that as to how you evolved into that, and so and also the links between performance in sport and performance in business. Matt, so we're gonna do a lot of swimming today, and welcome to Pod Squad, by the way. You got your white cap the other day, so cyclist, swimmer, multi-athlete, mate. Let's go into your background, Matt. Where have you evolved from with that accent? What's been your journey in a nutshell?
I mean, obviously, I was born in the UK. I'm originally from Southend-on-Sea in Essex. Come from a pretty big cycling family. My dad used to race. My mum raced at a very high level, sort of Great Britain representative back in the 50s, 60s. Ending with a fifth place in a world championship, which and from my youngest age I can ever remember, when she stopped racing internationally and me and my sister came along, we were put into the back of an old van back in the UK when she was doing time trials at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd drive all over the country, she'd race, and we'd be running around in car parks, cheering her on, and just generally, being a part of her journey, really. And then it's sort of from there I just sort of started doing a little bit of cycling with my mum, really, and then my dad, and then moved into racing from there sort of steadily.
Wow.
I had quite a big interest in cycling, but also football at the same time, so I was doing two sports.
When you say football, you mean English soccer?
English soccer. Yeah.
Okay, so you did both
Yeah.
the cycling and the football. So the cycling would have helped your aerobic fitness for the football, I would have thought.
Yeah, it was good. They were both working well together. I was sort of, I think even when I think back now at a young age, I was a bit of an obsessive person to do stuff like that. And I was getting quite heavily into both. And I can sort of remember my mum saying to me that, you've got to work out which one you want to do, because it's like, also my sister's doing stuff as well. It's getting too time consuming, and, you need to choose which one you want to do. So we went down the cycling road, which was really the obvious choice, really.
But one of the principles that we've learned and we teach, they say there's a French proverb that says the forest shapes the tree. The ecosystem, the forest, the garden you grow up in shapes you, and you're just a great example of that straight away. That there's your mum, world level cyclist, and you say dad was a cyclist as well.
Yes, yeah.
So there you are. You grew up straight away in an ecosystem of training and high performance, and getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and like that just became second nature. So from your point of view, what was that decision like, where you had to make the decision from football or cycling?
It was quite easy at the time, because my dad passed away when I was 11.
Oh, right.
So we had to, we were sort of almost trying to rebuild the family, with my mum looking after me and my sister. So, things were a little bit tough at the time, and my sister was doing swimming, and then I took up the cycling, to moving a little bit more forward with it, with riding with her. And so, and because I had an interest in it, and it was potentially may have been, helping us along at the time with my dad, my mum, directed me that way as well, even though that's what I wanted to do.
So let's talk about that then. So from there, for around age 11, you commit to cycling.
Yeah.
Let's talk then obviously your mum's a key influence, your dad had been a key influence.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some coaching. Can you recall some of those coaching relationships back then that really helped shape your thinking and your approach to success, even at a young age? Give me some of the conversations or the personalities that shaped you there.
I mean, I started riding probably when I was, 10 years old, maybe. And then I sort of was riding with my mum, but right back then, and I'm 56 years old now, you didn't really have a lot of coaching going on back then. So I was really directed by going on cycle rides with my mum and mixing with people that are in her club for the first few years until I was about 15, when I could actually start racing. And then I can remember when I was 15 and we were racing at schoolboy level, your sort of aim at that time was to get into the Essex team, because like the county, they had a representation, and there used to be like inter-counties races and stuff like that, and there would be a coach running that, which would generally be one of the dads or something like that. And then you would just be sort of, be running us through basic things we would be doing in training. But a lot of the time we were just doing our own thing, really, because it wasn't that structured until probably I got to about 18 years old, really. When I turned
So
to
give me,
senior level.
I mean, in my world, one of my coaches was Chucky Major. He was a phys ed teacher in athletics and told me everything about, eating properly and doing weights and, leading a disciplined life. And then Peter Boyle was my swimming coach, and then Fred Bartlett. These people have been
Yeah.
major shapers of who this, skinny, now 67-year-old bloke is. In your case, give me some names of some of those people that shaped you.
I mean, I remember when probably two people right at the start. There was a guy called Bob Downs, and, massive, massive legend in the UK. He's won a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games, been to multiple world championships, won the milk race. He's won just about everything. And he was sort of a friend of our family, and he started to give me a lot more direction. He was coming to the end of his career, and he'd taken up massage and physiotherapy. So, I'd go around to his house and we'd just chat, and he was, coaching me along from there, not almost, just in conversation, really, nothing too structured, but just, asking questions and, getting answers on them. And I was very, very quiet when I was younger, and I just used to not really say too much and just sort of, go along with, the people I interacted with. So he was one. And then there was another guy when I went to Mallorca for a training camp when I was 15 years old. My mum was like, back in the day, we're like 15, and we're like, me and my mate are like, oh, can we go to Mallorca for 2 weeks? So she's like, yes. So we ended up going on an aeroplane over there, and I met a guy called Pete Longbottom, and he was like a real top rider in the UK at the time. He was for many years after, and I took a lot of direction off him, a lot of, conversations on training and how to better yourself, and especially on discipline, because he was incredibly disciplined, incredibly driven. And I met him when I was 15, and I went to the Olympic Games with him in 1992 and raced there. So that friendship went on massively for a long, long time, which was pretty,
Yeah, beautiful.
yeah, meant a lot at the time, because he was a really high respected rider. And you go from like going on a training camp and you see him there, and he's like, you're reading about him in all the magazines. You sort of don't really want to say anything to him. And then next thing he's chatting away to you, and all of a sudden he becomes a friend, a teammate, and then, it just blossoms from there, really.
Yeah, yeah. But we often say that there are crucial conversations where someone says something to you that actually resonates and sticks in your head. Like, in fact, a mate of mine who I'll be doing the podcast with shortly, Robert Menzies, played water polo for Australia in 1972, and the coach of the Victorian team said to him just before one national championships, he said, mate, you're the fastest swimmer in the team. I don't want you to be the fetch and carry guy. I literally want you not to be going to the side and flaring and getting the ball and passing it. I want you at the top of the key scoring goals. And that one conversation led to him then top scoring at the tournament, scoring 6 and 7 goals a game. Now, he said without that conversation, his whole life would have been different. I'm just trying to get you to think back. What would be one or two things that Bob Downs said to you or Pete Longbottom said to you that's stuck, that even today you can still recall that conversation that help your thinking around discipline or training or approach to races or just living in general?
I can remember one quite clearly, and that's with my mum when I was like, I sort of was leaving school and we decided we were going to go down this road as I was going to try and ride be a full-time cyclist, basically, by living at home at the age of 16, 17. And then in the first few months, I was like living the life of it, but not really training that hard. And the first conversation she had with me after a couple of races when it didn't go so well is like, look, if you don't pull your finger out and start training harder, you're going to have to go out and get a job, because this is not what we discussed, a few months ago. So, and then I was like, yeah, well, that's, pretty true. And so things sort of took a bit of a jump start then. And then other ones for the other two guys is that I've always been one of those guys that just about does enough training, never really overdoes it. So probably those conversations with both those guys I mentioned is that your discipline needs to be lifted higher and your focus has got to be much better than what you're showing at the moment. And when you sort of get those sort of things told to you by guys that you really respect, and my mum as well, she was a massive influence on my life. You tend to sort of changes your direction really completely, or your mindset on what you really need to do to achieve stuff if you want to move forward.
Yeah. Well, we often say the coach or the mentor sees possibilities in you that you don't see yourself. And again,
Absolutely.
people like Bob Downs and your mum and Pete Longbottom. One of the other metaphors we use is Sadhguru, one of the Indian yogics, says you want to go to the top of Mount Everest, best go with someone who's already been there.
Yeah.
Best go with a guide that actually has been there before you versus some person that's not been there before you. And here you've got your mum, Bob Downs, and Pete Longbottom all have been further down the track than you. And they're telling you, if you want to come down this track, you need to and you can train and play at a whole other level. So clearly you responded to that. Like literally one of the guys in Pod Squad, you may have met him, Freddie English, the doctor. He's got me going to the ice bath, and the sauna, the hot water, and of course the 5 degree water. The first time you get in it, have you ever been in one of those ice bath things? The 5 degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
first you go, what the hell? 30 seconds is unbearable. And then Freddie goes, this time, Farnell, you're staying in for 4 minutes. You go, what the? And anyway, the last session we did a couple of days ago, which was my second session, I did 6 times 5 minutes. And only once did we get in the hot water or the sauna. In other words, he got me way outside my comfort zone and what we say, that outside the comfort zone into the learning zone, in the growth zone. And so we all need people like that in our lives to help us. Otherwise, we tend to stay so much closer to the comfort zone. So if I say to you, in those cycling days, what motivated you in those days? If I said, what was your big why? What was your goal? What was the driving force, the kind of the turbocharger that kept you going?
I used to love riding my bike. That was the biggest thing. I used to love riding my bike. And
So the very joy of riding itself.
yeah, there's massive, eh? Like to go cycling, from a young age to sort of, improving, and then traveling and stuff like that. That was a massive motivation. And then I used to write down every year I used to have diaries, and I used to write down my training every day, what I would do in a little diary. But at the front of the diary, I used to write down my aims for the year and my long-term aims. And that was also a driving factor as well, because if you didn't really write down, at the time you used to write everything. If you didn't put them things down, it's almost like you don't really know where you're going in the first place of what you're trying to achieve. So, you're just going out for a cycle ride just to go racing, or do you actually want to move forward with what you're doing? And I also wrote down at a very young age that I would, at some point in my career, like to be standing on a podium at an Olympics or a World Championships, or potentially a Commonwealth Games. I wrote that down at a very young age. So that was sort of a long-term plan that
Beautiful.
I
Of course,
had an aim for.
And of course, whether we're talking about, I mean, whether it be Coldplay to writing down goals. I mean, it's so powerful, the concept of writing
Yeah,
down goals.
yeah,
Think it, ink it.
yeah,
One of the other guys talks about, if a life's worth living, it's worth recording.
yeah,
And like as you say, this time of year, January, if people haven't written down their goals by today, they should get round to it in the next
yeah.
couple of days for what the year looks like. So let's take a look at that, because clearly, if I go to the Wikipedia page, it's all there, of all of these. So therefore, by 1993, you've won your first. Is that your first British kind of open title? Is it at that point? You want to just share some of those, relive some of
Um,
those experiences there?
yeah, I'd won that. Yeah, I'd had a few before then, but that was just. I mean, I don't even know who did that Wikipedia page. To be honest with you, 'cause it
No.
wasn't me. But that first one, the team pursuit championships, yeah, that was pretty big. And we won 6 of those.
Mm.
So that was just 6 national championships through various points of my career there. And then there's also, the World Cup events on the velodrome, sort of all over Europe and around the world and things like that. I got my first. I was just trying to read these here. Yeah, my first
Sure.
individual title was a time trial back in '99, the 10-mile time trial, which is sort of something I used to enjoy doing quite a bit of.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I sort of got a bit addicted to that. But then there's things like, we used to do the team time trials as well, over 100 kilometers. I think I won 6 national titles at that as well. So there's a few there. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. So let's talk then about these Olympic experiences. And as you say, there's Commonwealth Games in there as well. Tell
Yeah.
me some of the stories around your Olympic experience.
Oh, I mean, going to the Olympics is massive. I mean, you sort of you aim for these things, and then when they actually happen, it feels a bit, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's actually real. So you sort of go there and it's like the biggest sporting event in the world. And it's, you're walking around and you're like seeing athletes that you watch in other sports walking around the Olympic Village. It's pretty mind blowing.
Mm.
And it's, yeah, the whole experience is, yeah, it's unbelievable. Like,
So
unbelievable.
let's just talk about that, because I mean the closest I get to that is we go to World Masters water
Mm,
polo games. So all of a sudden you're in Japan or
yeah.
Korea, and somewhere in there, and again, it's what we teach the kids is present moment awareness, because at the end of the day, to perform, the last thing you want to be doing is, God, my God, I'm at the Olympics, I'm here in this zone. It's like being, I've got to still come back to, I'm on the track and I'm against these 5 or 10 or however many other people,
Mm,
and they're flesh and blood just like me. So I have to actually, in fact, one of the formulas we say is performance equals potential minus interference. It's
mm,
like, so if I have to minimize the interference to get back into the moment to play to my potential, because the moment I let all this other chatter and bullshit go on, not the least of which is, my God, I read about him in a magazine and now I'm
yeah.
racing against him. You can't have that. So what were some of your, let's just go to that, some of the mind tricks or the things that you learnt over the years to get back into the moment and get yourself into that peak performance zone?
I mean, you obviously, I mean, I'd been to junior world championships when I was 17, and then so I'd already had experience at an international, level of all the best athletes being there, and we had a pretty good experience there, and we had a pretty good result. I'd done a couple of world championships leading into '92 Olympics as well, so we sort of got there. So we knew about, obviously everyone's got heroes, not necessarily in their sport, in other sports,
Mm.
but you sort of, you're there to try and do the best you can do. And you do, we were pretty, I've never really thought about that question, to be honest with you. We just naturally got on with what we trained to do,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
With
yeah,
also, taking in the whole experience of it as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And by the way, was your mum at any of those
Yeah.
Olympic? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
good. So
she came to '92 Barcelona. That was 100 kilometers team time trial, and that started on the Formula One motor racing circuit.
Mhm.
So it was pretty accessible for the crowd to be sitting in the stand. because it's quite cool actually, because every team had their own garage, like in the Formula One, and it started in the pit lane, and then you did a lap of the course, then went straight out on the motorway, come back, did another lap, then back out on the motorway. So it was pretty cool. But she came to that one. Yeah, that was good. It was good to have her there.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. So let's talk about now. I mean, clearly you were successful with that British cycling team, but there's of course been a whole lot of history created since then. And I'm just going to one article here on Harvard Business Review about Sir Dave Brailsford and what he had done from 2002. So it was just a little after your era, but I gather you've had mates or connections in cycling to have seen the journey that British cycling went on under his stewardship. What do you know of that, and what have you heard about that in terms of this Sir David Brailsford and the British cycling team?
I mean, he changed the whole structure of the way British cycling was run at the time, and a lot of it was to do, he had a lot more funding, which obviously helped at the time. Because when I think back to when I was racing, it was only in the last 2 years and before I stopped that we actually got any lottery funding at the time. That's
Right.
when it came in. So if we went to a training up in, say, Manchester, and I lived in Essex, we used to get like 15 pence per mile petrol money. And we had to put in the receipts for the petrol, and that was all we would get. But then when we went to the last 2 years, when lottery funding came in, we sort of, we got paid a certain amount of money per month for the whole year, sort of tax-free as well. And then obviously in 2002, the funding just got higher and higher and higher. And then obviously all the sort of infrastructure in British cycling got bigger and bigger, with equipment, with physiotherapists, coaching, international coaches. There was more racing involved because they had more funds to send us to, or these guys, because I missed that. We sort of bigger and better races more frequently, longer stays in Europe, training camps in the winter to Australia and stuff like that for a few months. It made a massive difference, like massive. And then they were having full-time paid coaches. It was the lottery funding, massive amount to do with it, and then the results followed, clearly followed, like massively followed.
Brilliant. So let's talk then about going from sport to business and your business. Tell me about your gravitation or your transition from full-time competition to setting up your own business.
Well, when I finished cycling in 2000, the end of 2000, came to an abrupt halt. It wasn't a planned thing, but it just happened. And then I sort of spent about 3 years in the UK, just sort of not really doing anything really.
So tell me, why did it come to an abrupt halt? What happened there?
That was 2000, and we'd raced the year before at the World Championships in the team pursuit, and we came fifth, which was a pretty good result at the time. And then we were going into 2000, and the aim was to get on the podium at Sydney for the Olympics. So we'd been on training camps and and things were going quite well. And we was into March, and then we'd been moving a bit better than we had been, and basically gear sizes on track bikes were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they got a bigger gear with a lower cadence to ride faster, and the gear sizes were going up. And we'd come off a race, training camp, whatever, and I was going pretty well at the time. And we had, the biggest name in the team at the time was Bradley Wiggins. He was in our team then. And we basically had the same team from the year before. We went to a training camp, and then the coach at the time, he wanted to take a step back and reverse it and start using smaller gears again.
Wow.
I was like, and I sort of started questioning it, sort of in the track, saying, I don't think that's the correct way to go. I said, we've been moving forward on bigger gears, and now you want to try going back to small gears. And then we had a bit of a crosswords on it. And then, I do rue this to this day. And I said that I'm not doing it. I am not going
backwards.
when I think we're going forwards. And he said, well, if you don't do that, you're not part of the team. And I said, that's fine. And I walked. And that was it. I just left, and I never rode for Great Britain ever again after that. And they went on to Sydney and they ran third and they got the bronze medal. So, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, really it's, and they rode bigger gears. They went straight back to the old plan.
All right.
And it was, and you sort of think about that decision then, and it's, it's still a bit haunting even to this day.
You took a stand.
Yeah, you take a stand sometimes, and you got to stand your ground. And sometimes it has completely reverse effect, which this did, and it's sort of one thing that I wanted to achieve, and I feel I missed out on it with the same boys that I've been riding with 3 years before. So I sort of rode on for a few months and then I retired basically. But that was the end of it. But
well, there straight away, from a psychological point of view, of course, you then have to go through the grieving component of that. We said denial, anger, bargaining, frustration, depression, acceptance. How do I turn that into a positive and get on with the rest of my life? Otherwise, as you say, you can bathe in that coulda, woulda, shoulda world for way too long. So it becomes a mental process in itself. And as you say, they then went back to the bigger gears slow.
Yeah, running anyway. Bigger gears, and the gears are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, there wasn't really a lot of logic in
going smaller,
taking a step back again from where we were. And it is a case of could have, should have, would have, because I might not have made it anyway, but I was pretty sure I was going to.
Yeah, sure.
In the runnings for whatever, but that's history now. But
so then how did you then obviously move on from that psychologically, but also career-wise? How did you then get to the point of setting up your own business? What was the trigger or series of triggers that did that?
Well, I spent a few years in the UK, sort of 3 years after I stopped, just sort of doing odd jobs, and and I bought a house and stuff. And then I moved to New Zealand and I lived there for 3 years. But when I got there, because when I left school, I basically just about passed any exams I took. I had no skills to do anything apart from ride a bike because I never had a job when I left school to when I stopped cycling at 32. No job at all. So I pretty much had, no skills to do anything. So I started working in a bike shop over there, just selling bikes. And then I did that for 3 years. And in the meantime, got into triathlon. And then came to Western Australia, funny enough, to do Busso Ironman. But in the meantime, and then I came over to Perth, and I'd been here before in training camps, and I was like thinking I actually wouldn't mind living here. But in the meantime, I was thinking I was in talks with the guy that I worked with in New Zealand to potentially buy his bike shop because he wanted to get out of it. And so I was applying for the visa and trying to do the bike shop, and then the visa came up first. And New Zealand was great, but the weather was like living in the UK. It was terrible. We're living in Wellington.
Which part of New Zealand?
We was in Wellington on the north.
Oh yeah, well that is cold down there.
Windy Wellington.
Windy,
I love the place, but the weather was extreme. So I ended up coming to Perth, and then I ended up working in a bike shop here. And then I did a couple of those, and then ended up at Churchill Cycles, and then got about 3 years in, and I said to one of the young guys in there who'd been there a while, I said, are you thinking of buying into the shop at any point? And he's like, no, I'm not interested. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to ask Rick, who was the owner at the time, if he was going to sell the business. And then I said to him, what do you think? And he said, yeah, he wasn't bothered about it. So even I didn't have to ask him, but I just thought it was the right thing to do because he'd been there a while. So I asked Rick, and he's like, yes. So bought 30% of the business. And then literally, I don't know what it was, maybe 3 years later, he retired. And then I had the whole business with absolutely zero means of running a business, as in knowing how to run a business.
Skills.
No idea, no skills at all, none. And in the 3 years of me having 30% of the business, I still was in the workshop fixing bikes and selling them. I never paid any attention to actually running the business because I was too busy trying to do other stuff. Quite busy. So when it got handed over, I learning it on the fly, really. And I have to say, I probably still am.
Yep.
But it is going all right. Funny.
Yeah, good, mate. Good. So let's just look at that. Talk about out of your comfort zone. So from the time you know, who was what was the fellow's name who retired from the business? Not Rick.
Rick,
It was Rick. Okay.
yeah.
So okay. So what have been the areas you've had to really study to get better at? Areas you know you little. Obviously, there's finance, there's marketing, there's stock, there's people, there's training people, there's probably some kind of occupational health and safety and all the tax. So what are the areas you've really had to put your head down in and learn from, or even maybe Nicole's helped you as a wife partner? What are the areas in particular you've really had to develop muscles and skills in?
All of it,
Yeah.
everything. Like, you know, just ordering stock. You start like trying to work out, you know, what you need to order. If you've got to do forward orders. I've got a really good accountant, I have to say, a guy called David Craig,
Mm-hmm.
lives in Cottesloe. He's been doing it for years. He was the accountant. He took over. So I decided at the time I didn't want to pay anyone to do input stuff into the computer on the MyOb, whatever. I will do it. So I sit there with my one finger typing, you know, like putting all the numbers in, this, that, and the other. And David has sort of helped me along with that, sort of teaching me how to do it, been incredibly patient, and now I'm up to full speed on it. And then, so I do that. I order the stock. I do sales. I do the mechanics. I do everything. I don't like paying anyone else to do anything I think I can do, apart
Mm-hmm.
from the two guys that I employ in the store. So you know, I've had to learn all of that, and it's been a pretty hard process, and it's quite, you know, it is pretty stressful, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all
Mm-hmm.
going okay.
Great. So just on that, how long have you been running it on your own now?
7 years.
Oh, 7 years. Okay, so it's been a
Yeah.
bit of a journey. Well, what are the every 7 years? That's not the 7 year itch. So if we were going to follow some of your principles from sport, um, and you have aims every year, are you using that same kind of diary with the business? What are your aims for the business?
Just to keep it growing, eh? You know, I'm
Yep.
still pretty driven, like from trying to do well in bike races. I'm quite driven to get sales and stuff.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I'll always be chasing up anything I think possibly I can get one over the line with somebody
Yep.
without being too pushy. Because we're not, I don't like, we're not salesmen in our shop. We're pretty
Yep.
cruisy. There's no pressure to buy any bikes or anything like that. You know, if you
Mm-hmm.
buy a bike, you know, most of the time we won't even ask if you want a bottle cage on it, because we feel like we're pushing people into that. We might mention it, but it's very, you know, we're quite easy going on the customers type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not like working in, say, one of the bigger branded stores where they're pushing you to do all your add-ons and everything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I do like, you know, I'm constantly chasing after sales and, you know, trying to get bikes for people. My phone is always on. My email's always on. My messenger's always on. If people message me on a Sunday night about something, you know, and I see it, I'll reply on it, or I'll
Yep.
check the stock. Then it's like a 24/7 thing for me.
Yeah, sure.
I do
So,
quite enjoy it.
yeah, well, just on that, it reminded me of John Hughes, the car dealer, saying, "I actually like seeing the smiles on people's faces when they've got a new car, when they've made the decision." So, in your case, let's just talk about that then. One of the principles we teach is a principle we call the R factor, the relationship factor. We say that the strength of the relationship is frequency times quality of contact. It's based on some stats that came out of Boston years ago. It said, why do customers leave a store? It said, or a business? 15% leave because they find a cheaper product, 15% leave because they find a better product. And I think it was 29% leave because of too infrequent contact, and 40% leave because the quality of the contact was poor or not up to what they expected. So we go, almost 70% of the reason someone doesn't do business with you has got nothing to do with the price or the product, but in fact, the frequency times the quality of the contact. And we say, in the ideal world, you want a lifetime relationship with someone, because I imagine in cycling, person buys a bike off you year one, year three, they want an upgrade, and year six, they want another upgrade, and then they've got kids, and then they've got mates, and then they're in a cycling group. So you want that stickability. So give me some examples of, say, some people who've bought a bike from you, let's say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and the buying journey, the upgrade journey, how your customers have been at Churchill have been sticky, that they've become more like lifetime relationships? You've got some examples you can think of there?
Yeah, I mean, we've got customers that have been coming, before I was even working at the store, still coming to the shop.
Yeah.
And I've got sort of, me and the guy who works with me, Carlo, we've all got our own customers, but we've got like customers that sort of come in and, will buy a new high-end bike potentially every couple or 3 years. And then, they're going through their riding phase and all of a sudden they've got kids and then they're coming back to the store still and they're buying, 12-inch, 16-inch kids bikes. And then it comes into the families moving in and then, the rest of their family comes in and the relationships get big as well, because we do a fair bit of high-end bikes, but we also have got a big area in family bikes around Maree where the store is, which is quite important as well.
Yeah.
We are the local bike shop.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
it's very old school in my store. It's just, there's bikes and wheels and saddles. It's everywhere. And it reminds me of when I was young, when I was first getting into it, and we used to go to this bike shop in Essex, and this guy just used to have like crap all over the store, but you could walk in and rummage through it and, find just about anything. And, we're sort of along that lines, really. We're terrible because we never throw anything out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just stuff everywhere. You can see it in that picture there. And
Yeah.
that's actually, it's way more untidy than that now, but there's no clean spaces in there. But
Right. Right.
we're
Right.
there to sell bikes and fix stuff.
Yeah. They're there to sell bikes and fix stuff. Exactly.
Not like, you might have to wipe your feet when you leave, but but
Yeah. Right.
it's
Yeah.
that's how it works, really.
So if I was to say to you, in regard to say business or sales or marketing, do you read books or do you listen to podcasts? Do you embark on any learning in that area? What's been your journey there?
I don't read books. No, I don't do any of that. I
Right.
might ask an odd few questions to a couple of mates who've got shops, and I might ask Carlo, who I work with, but no, not really.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much winging it, I have to say.
Yeah.
Don't
Sure.
really, but I think I've done all right with it.
Yeah. Well, if you're happy with the
Considering
numbers
that,
and happy with the growth,
yeah,
that's
I mean, everything's so, from seriously not really knowing anything about running a business at all.
mm,
It was quite confronting the first day going in, the 1st of July, like 7 years ago, thinking, right, everything's on me now, and everything you've got's tied up in what you've got. You sort of got to have a pretty good, I don't know. You've got to be pretty driven that you're going to make this work, because
yeah.
might be your only option, because if the thing falls over, a lot of other stuff falls over with it.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
it's pretty tricky, but
Yeah.
it's been good. I think I've been a bit lucky, to be honest with you, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, one of the books that we teach people to read is a book called The E-Myth. The E-Myth talks about the entrepreneurial myth, where if a person they think if a person runs their own business, they're an entrepreneur. But he goes, no, they might just be someone who's so pissed off with the boss that they had, they go, stuff it, I'm going to run my own business, and it's a massive leap of faith.
yeah,
Calls it the entrepreneurial seizure. We go, stuff it, I'm going to do it myself. Then
yeah,
2 weeks later, you go, what the hell have I just done? You know.
yeah.
But let's just take a look at this. What does a day in the life of Matt Illingworth look like these days? What time do you wake up? What do you do during the day? What exercise do you do? What time do you go to bed? What does a day look like? We like to go because we say, what are your daily habits? Let's talk about that.
Well, I wake up at 10 to 5 every day, apart from Mondays. I'll stay in bed till about 7:30. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, 10 to 5. And because I'm swimming and running now only, I'll either go and run up to 8 to 15 to 20K, whatever I feel like. But it'll be a run, but I won't know what I'm doing until I go out the front door. I'll decide when I get in the street. So I don't wake up saying, right, I'm going to run 12K. I'll go out the door and run up the road, and then and if it's a run, it's the same route every time, and then I add little bits on it. So, which is a bit weird. Nicole thinks it's really strange because she looks at my Strava and I run around the same block all the time. like
Yeah.
every day up the road around the back of Netherlands and that, and then I might add something on in Claremont.
Yeah.
And then there's swimming as well. I do a couple of swim squads. Obviously, I've started swimming with Pod Squad.
Yep.
And then I get back probably about 7:15, something like that, and then get the kids ready for school and stuff, and then head off to work, and work all day till 5:30, get home, and then you pretty much time you get in, 6:15, dinner, put the kids to bed, straight to bed by 8 o'clock, really, most days. That's
How
it.
old are the kids? How old are they?
Charlie's 6 and Finn's 9.
Yeah, right.
So it's a bit, it's a bit tricky because when, Finn's 9, he's getting into his cycling and he, likes his mountain biking. But our little Charlie's, he's autistic.
Mm-hmm.
He's non-verbal. He's struggling.
Yes, I met him at the beach on Christmas Day, I think
Yeah,
it was.
that's
Yeah.
right. So, he's up and he's down and he's,
Mm.
so he's sort of, we've got a lot, we got a lot on our plate with that as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stress involved with that. You just sort of don't know what's coming, sort of things. That makes it a bit tricky. So, I know Nicole would say the same. We need to exercise for mental health on that. I do actually like exercising on my own. I mean, I like going to Pod Squad and like swimming, but most of the time, that's swimming, you're with everyone, but you got your head under the water, so you don't actually have to talk to anyone. So you can just be in your own space, gliding along. Same with the running. So that helps massively, really.
Helps you deal with or process or manage.
Yeah,
Or,
it's best. It's the best setup for the day for me.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and
Nicole,
and again, we teach this in terms of mental health. What we now know is they talk about your daily dose, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, and the endorphins, all of those neurotransmitters that you get by exercising at the start of the day. And again, whether it be running or certainly the beach, that connection with nature, the sunlight, the ocean, the sand, the trees, all of those things are so good in terms of getting your energy and your brain in the right place to start the day. As you say, the alternative, particularly when you've got all the stress of the business plus family, the alternative, I mean, there are people that don't exercise, of course. They don't eat right. They sleep in. They do have, kids and businesses and so on. Then they don't eat right. They drink. And then they wonder why they feel even worse the next day.
That's right.
So the exercise becomes that circuit breaker in a way, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's massive. Yeah, I mean, I can't not exercise. Because I have to be pretty tired for me not to do anything. But I also, and I've had this my whole life, is you just like drop a real guilt trip on yourself if you don't get out of bed because you couldn't, because you were too tired or you didn't feel like it. And it's like, and then you I personally struggle with that for the rest of the day. I just missed that one. I should have taken that opportunity right then.
Yep.
I'll have to wait for tomorrow type thing. You get quite frustrated.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but it's just probably ingrained in me for so many years that, you felt like you should have gone out. But anyway.
Well, it's part of your daily routine. I mean, we use a principle of Aristotle who said, excellence is not an act, but a habit. We are what we repeatedly do. And if you've done it every day of your life, that's the way you've started. And I know myself, the same thing, mate. If I haven't done a swim in the morning, the rest of the day is a bit of a cloud there because you haven't had that boost of, now we know about serotonin and dopamine. It's that. And also there's something about, in my case, the social connection thing of, it could be in a bit of a bad mood, something's happened, but by the time you get and you've spoken to 2 or 3 or 10 people, it's shifted the internal world, which, by the way, one of the things we set up over the last year was a thing called Blokes Talk Beachside, which was blokes getting together and just beginning to talk about the whole area of mental health. And what the research shows is that 40% of blokes have never spoken to anyone about what goes on inside their head or how they feel. They just think, well, I'll just tough it out, mate, and I'll be okay. But that's, again, invariably they start to hear other guys' story and go, holy shit, I thought I was bad, but some blokes are going through, all sorts of things. That's one of the principles of Blokes Talk Beachside, was we say everyone's going through something. Everyone's going through something. Everyone's got a story. And in fact, there's a great poster I found the other day. Everyone's going through something and a story that usually we can't see or hear. They're doing it on their, but again, talking about it with someone, whether it be wife, partner, mates, is so important, because we say problem shared is a problem halved, let alone exercise. So as you say, mentoring wise in business, it's really been Carlo or other blokes that you know, or other people you know who've run other bike shops, so you can bounce problems or
Yeah, just bouncing ideas off, like just asking questions, really. I think that's the biggest thing you can do without, just if you're not sure about something, ask a question and work out whether the answer you get is the correct one or what you were thinking or looking for in the first place.
Yep.
I don't tend to ask people a question so the answer will be exactly what I'm going to do. I've already got an idea of what I'm thinking. I just sort of run it past a couple of people to see if they are sort of, if I'm on the right track or not.
And check with them
Check
Yep.
it out, really. Yeah.
Fan-
I mean, it sounds really like I use it like this unscientific way I run the business, but it's pretty, just sort of going along from day to day with it, really.
But if it's making money, that's a start. If you're in the black rather than the red, that's a very good start.
I mean, another thing I do too, which is self-taught as well, is I don't buy anything stock wise I can't pay for, and in the 30 days I get to pay for it, and then never ever, like never.
Yeah.
So if you have to miss out on some things, you miss out on it, like, because there's not a chance I'm going to overextend myself, or I get those problems where you can't start paying your bill at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So everything in my shop, I own it. It's all mine. I don't owe anyone anything at all.
Yeah.
And it will always be like that. And I think that's probably the best piece of advice I've ever given myself, is that, don't overextend yourself, eh?
Yeah. You're not gambling. You're not going, mate, I won't pay for it, but I'll make the money in the 30 days. And all of a sudden you're caught short.
I 100% refuse to roll the dice on anything, like buying double the amount of bikes because you can get them, and, if you sell them in this amount of time, you'll get this amount out of it. And all of a sudden it doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden you've dug this hole and you just can't get out of it. Like,
Yep. So that's clever. As they say, success often is as much what you say no to, or sometimes more to what you say no to than what you say yes to. To be clear around your rules. So if being conservative or managing that risk is one of the rules, what would be, let's say in your case, a rule you would have around, you've already talked about not being pushy, but what would be some rules you have around sales? So the way you go about the sales process and the way you might teach someone else to go about the sales process. What would be some tips you'd give people?
God, terrible question.
What to do, what not to do. Clearly, one of your.
I'd say never be pushy, because I just go on that. How when I go to buy something at a shop, don't be pushy with the person that's trying to buy stuff, because you're trying to get the sale over the line. Just just have a chat with them, get them to feel comfortable. If they've got their kids there with them, try and interact a bit with them, but also find out exactly what they want to buy, as opposed to flying straight in there and trying to sell them something that they're not looking for. Just ask them a few questions about what they're actually looking for, and spend some time with them, and don't try and rush it because you're trying to move on to the next thing, which you might get if you go into, JB Hi-Fi or whatever, and don't try and upsell them on what they're actually looking for. Just try and sell them what they actually want. And if you can't get it, try and get it for them if they're willing to wait. But I think that we find that works quite well for us, because we don't push them into anything, and we actually find out what they're actually looking for. And if they're not sure, you just got to show them some options as well. Find out what their budget is, and just don't push them too hard. They've got to feel comfortable when they're in your space. Some people aren't, because they're nervous that they're going to get nervous that they're walking into a bunch of car salesmen.
Yeah.
Well, and no one likes that. So
no, not at all. No. Over the years, we've done quite a bit of retail sales, and one of the reasons I've got into this area is, one, because I was so bad at it myself. But what we teach, and I'll just show you here, what you're talking about is this first section is if they don't like you in the first place, then they're not going to listen to you anyway. But you clearly, we say the first part, and as you say, connecting with the kids, connecting with the person. We say people like to do business with people they like, and they usually like people who like them, which is a pretty good starting point. And then this section here, which is we say go swimming in the blue zone, which means get to really understand their needs, which is what you're talking about there. Whereas the untrained person hears one need they have and immediately jumps into red zone to try and get them hot. Whereas we say, no, they get as much information here as possible, which is their favorite subject, and usually themselves and their problem or what they want. And we say, never diagnose and never prescribe until you diagnose. In other words, what's their problem? What do they want? Now let me talk about what we've got that can actually solve that problem for you. And how does that sound to you, Bob or Mary? And you're making me think of at Lululemon, and I think this could work for you guys. At Lululemon, they say we don't have salespeople, we have educators.
Yeah.
We want to educate the customer about our product and how it can solve their problem and be good for them, not, as you say, be a car salesman and twist their arm up their back. And we say, if you do these two steps well enough and ask enough questions, then the sale closes itself, because you actually get the person, the green zone, green being action. So here, orange is like the stop lights. You're not going, you're not stopping, you're warming up, the warm-up phase. Blue is we're going swimming in the blue zone, understanding their needs, their problems, their hopes, their dreams, their fears. And the more they like you, the more they're going to tell you that stuff. And then you prescribe based on what they've told you. Red is they're getting hot now. They like the idea of what you're talking about. And of course, that's part of, we say, is this going to work for you? Can you see that working for you? Is that okay with you? You're constantly checking with them. And off the back of that, it becomes quite easy to then go, well, that being the case, which one of these do you want to take, the red or the blue? And then the purple patch is where you're at, is we say you want people, repeat business and referrals. You want them in the purple patch. We say if 80% of your business can come from repeat business and referrals, then you got yourself a good business.
Yeah.
Because the advertising then becomes word of mouth, which is the hottest, most effective advertising. You got people leaving Churchill Cycles as ambassadors of the business, let alone, as you say, pre-meet is all the things you do before the customer comes in, from store training or merchandising or marketing or website. But what you've been talking about there is really not being pushy, because you're truly understanding their needs. What are your comments around what I've just talked about there for you?
Yeah, that's exactly how I try to do it, to be honest with you. Makes you sound like I know what I'm talking about, eh?
Well, if you've spent all
that's exactly, yeah. I feel quite good seeing that, actually.
That's good. That's good. Well, I mean, the point is, if you've watched good performers in other bike stores, and you've learnt by osmosis in a way, you've learnt like a sponge. You've learnt and you've practiced over the years what works and what doesn't work. And as you say, you want to take a stand for, this is the way we want to be at Churchill Cycles. We don't want to be pushed. We want to be, whether it be educators or helpers or, we say to people, whether we did a lot of work with surf stores and bookshops and other retailers, electrical stores and others. We say, you got to tell the kids, guys, we want this family to be doing business with us in 20 years from now. We want the cousins, the uncles, the aunties. We want them all to be driving from 20 and 30 and 50 mile away to come to us. Because as you say, that very piece you said, we want to be known as the local bike store. When you're thinking of bikes, you think of Churchill Cycles. I would imagine that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
The local, to own that kind of thinking, and really we talk about owning their mental real estate, owning that when they think bikes, they think you guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's
mate.
great.
A mate of mine who lives literally around the corner, Rick Vittino, is an Italian. His family have a house up around Lake Como. He loves riding the hills, and he's got some collector edition bikes in his wine cellar. That's how much he loves bikes, mate.
Yeah.
So I know that that people in bikes love their bikes, and
Yeah,
they're almost like pieces of art. Some of these
sure. That's right.
bikes that they've got. James Sutherland's another mate of mine who loves his bikes, and his Leica as well. So it's a fantastic community, which really over the last 20 years, it just seems to have grown and grown and grown, has it, in terms of that bike riding community.
Oh, it's massive, eh? Like you can, if you were to, roll around the river in the opposite direction on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's sort of 5 o'clock onwards, there's peloton after peloton, and they've all got, they're all wearing the same kit they've had made with their sponsors on it or their brand name for whatever their group's called. It's at every level. It's unbelievable how much how big it's got.
Yeah.
It's massive, eh? Every cafe, around Applecross, sort of, Cottesloe, Claremont, wherever, full of cyclists, Subiaco, any of those stop points on those any given morning, full of cyclists, eh?
Yeah, and again, it's a great example in terms of mental health. It's not just the bike riding; it's the sit and coffee afterwards,
Yeah.
and the chat, and the sharing of information and
Yeah.
ideas, and the community that's set up there. So, as we move to a close, Matt, what would you say, 3 key tips or tools if you're going to look back at the young 13-year-old Matt Illingworth and give him three or 4 key tips, or 1 or 2 or 3 key tips? What would you say to the 13-year-old you?
Blimey. I'd probably tell him he done all right.
Yeah, he's done all right. He's done all right. But
Yeah,
the tips you'd give him looking forward.
That would be, yeah. I would just, well, it's not really a tip, really, but I would almost say that pretty much work out what your aims are, really, from a young age, no matter what you're doing, really, especially if it's in sport. Starts that way, and then just have everything outlined in front of you about what you want to achieve and where you want to go.
Yeah.
I think that's quite relevant to a lot of people, and it's obviously hard to do that when you're that age. But when I look back, I was already doing that, and I was doing that out of my, I came up with that in my own mind about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to aim. But maybe, which I find quite, I was being able to do that at such a young age. But yeah, that's about all I could say, really. Just get some aims down. But looking back at my time so far, I think I've done quite a lot with my life, and I'm quite happy with it at the moment. There's been a few ups and downs, but every time there's been a bit of a blip, it sends you off in another direction, and then other things happen. So I might have had some major things happen in my life around 2000, but then it was a redirection in another direction. And if 2000 hadn't resulted in where I am right now, not that I would have ever known, I would have to say that if someone showed me the 2 options of where I would have been to where I am now, I'd have taken this one with the kids, Nicole, business, everything. I think I made some bad choices that turned out well, in the long run.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Mate, is there anything we haven't spoken about that?
No, it's all pretty good, really.
Okay. All right. Because I'm looking.
You're not going to get anything extra out of me unless you ask me.
Yeah. Sure. No.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the notes here, and as I say straight away, you're a great example of the ecosystem. The mum and the dad both being champions in cycling, and you, the product of that, the next generation. There's a great statement from Isaac Newton: if I have seen so far, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. And here you are, your mum and dad clearly were already champions in cycling, and then you growing up in that ecosystem, and them guiding you consciously and not so consciously, although your mum guiding you quite directly in terms of, Matt, pull your finger out. That wasn't what we discussed. I mean, I remember Van Morrison at one stage, in one saying, I had to read the Riot Act. I had to read the Riot Act. And she read the Riot Act to you there. I've just read a book on Ernest Shackleton, the explorer down in the Antarctic. And at one stage, he had to read the Riot Act out to one of the guys was complaining, they'd been like locked up in ice for about 12 months. And one of the guys was complaining, and he had to remind them, he read the Riot Act. Well, your mum read the Riot Act to you in terms of the pull the finger out, as did, I think, think one of your other coaches, whether it be Longbottom or Downs, in terms of, mate, you need to train harder. We've seen this time and time again in Australian rules football. There's great examples of where they've said to champions, Gary Ablett Jr., they said, mate, you're a champion, but you don't train hard enough. He's gone, what the hell? How can this be? I've been successful, and I'm a champion. You're a champion and you can do better. And in doing so, you then trained harder and went on and won the Brownlow medal. It goes on and on in terms of those honest conversations. But you also talking about the diary, the importance of both recording, not only what you're doing training wise, but the aims for the year. And again, we've seen this time and time again in business and in sales. My son-in-law just the other day said to me, Leigh, I've written down my goals for the year, and I know that if I make 2 sales of that product and 2 sales of that product, I'm going to hit my financial targets and it'll be a good year. So he's already using the principle that Stephen Covey talks about. He said, all things are created twice. First, the mental creation in the mind, and then in the physical world, in the real, it's like an architect. He's drawn the plans, then you go and actually build the house. And so there you are with your diary, even at a very young age, writing down those goals and then, achieving all those things that you achieved. So Matt, mate, thank you so much for this leading your best life. There's a pile of great tips there. I'm sure you're going to continue leading your best life and continuing to introduce people to the joys of cycling, let alone all of the community things that brings as well. And mate, we look forward to you and Nicole continuing being in Pod Squad and all the best with everything, mate. I look forward to swimming alongside you again very soon.
Right. Thanks for having me on it, Leigh. It's been really good. Thank you.
Pleasure, mate. See you soon.
Right. Thanks. See ya.
Bye. Bye.